Justin, let's wrap it up with another SEC game. So 4 or 5 games we're talking SEC ball. This one coming down in College Station. Georgia at number 8, Texas A&M. You and I are on the same side here. A&M opens -7.5 on DK. I like the Aggies a lot. I have a Final Four future on Texas A&M, but I think they're overvalued here coming off of that emotional big win at Missouri. Wade Taylor hits the game winner. You upset Mizzou in Columbia. Aggies have now won 5 of their last 6 games. Georgia dropping 6 of its last 8 after losing to Mississippi State over the weekend. Yes, you get road Georgia in this spot. 30-point loss at Florida, 21-point loss at Alabama, 18-point loss at Tennessee. Yes, Georgia turns the ball over a lot, 296th in turnover percentage, and A&M thrives off of their ball pressure, also generates a lot of second chance shots, as we know, number 1 in the country at that, which Georgia really struggles to limit. But I do think Georgia's going to continue to get some positive shot variance in this game. Entering the matchup, shooting 28.9% from 3 in SEC play over the last couple games. They've shot at least 37.5% from deep. Asa Newell had a big game against Mississippi State. Also think Georgia's length really matches up well against A&M's size here with Newell and RJ Godfrey and even their depth off the bench. And then Georgia's going to have an advantage in transition if they can limit A&M off the second chance opportunities, or just by nature of A&M crashing and trying to get those second chance shots. Georgia should get more runouts in transition. 85th percentile in transition efficiency per synergy, and A&M 36th percentile defending transition on a points per possession basis. They're elite in the half court, not great at defending in transition. I really like the Bulldogs here. I'll be on Georgia plus 7.5. Maybe we get a +8 overnight.
Yeah, maybe. I'm with you. It's a tough buy, but I don't know. I love what gets left at the back of the shop that no one wants to pick up. Those are often the best, right? Because guess what? It's a dynamic shop. The stuff that no one wants to touch gets better priced over time. And that's how this market works. So if you think it's gross, if you think everyone thinks it's gross, and you give it time and it sits there and it continues to collect dust, the shopkeeper essentially will, even a couple cents. We're not playing a game that you win by 50,000 points. We win by 1 to 2%, and we're pretty happy. 3 to 4% ROI long term can make you a lot of money in gambling. Back to this matchup, though, Eli.
I like the analogy.
I try to do, the analogy. I know we're talking on a show where probably most people who are still hanging out with us in February, a half hour in, probably understand college basketball betting better than the average. And I appreciate that. I appreciate all you guys. You are awesome. Maybe it will help you talk to your friends about it better. But yeah, maybe it's on ears that are not deaf, but it's the opposite. So well tuned that they don't need it anymore. Nonetheless, only 3 teams in college basketball of 364. So we're talking like a tiny, less than 1%. Only 3 teams have a record luck in shot quality greater or bigger than smaller than -25%. Those 3 teams, Bradley, Memphis, Texas A&M. Those are the 3 luckiest teams in the nation by a good meter or two, because next is Riverside at 23 and then Jacksonville State at 21. So shot quality does not have that many teams outside of 20, let alone 25. Usually when a team gets this lucky, it's just auto fade. Texas A&M is expected to be around a top 50 team in efficiency, seeing a adjusted efficiency of 20 rather than what they're at right now over at KenPom, which is just a ridiculous amount higher. Honestly, I think they're currently sitting at 25. So they're getting essentially an extra 5 points per game on net against their opponents more than what shot quality is expecting. Their ATS record in terms of what shot qualities, wherever we're getting the close from, which, half point here and there can change a couple things. 14-9 against the spread. Shot qualities expectations 5-18. We hate them. And it's not that we hate them. We don't personally. The way that they play, their spacing is bad. Their shot making is bad. They really rely on getting great looks offensively. They do not have the shooters to take tough shots, and they do not develop the spacing to give their shooters good chances to do so. And so guess what? They have to rely on other things like a 41.6% free throw rate, only taking the most open of threes possible with a very low, honestly, rate in terms of making them in general. It's gross. 30% shooting on off the dribble threes this season, 30.3% shooting on catch and shoots. And they do take a lot of them. So they're getting lucky hitting a lot of them is kind of what shot quality is seeing. And it's honestly in the post up too. So I don't really know. This team's a little bit of an enigma to the data, something we're pretty excited to fade just on trusting the data alone. But you also have Georgia, who I think is in a pretty good buy low opportunity as well, coming off of a game against Mississippi State at home that they were in. They kind of struggled with a little bit, but analytically, shot math saying they were expected to beat Alabama, which is a crazy thing to say on the road.
Well, they just don't hit shots. That's the problem. But now they're finally starting to hit shots, like we saw in the last couple of games against LSU and against Mississippi State. One last thing, motivationally speaking, Georgia has a ton to play for. Now, I know A&M is in the thick of the SEC standings, but Georgia's trying to fight for an NCAA tournament berth. They're right on the bubble one way or the other. So that's big.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no two ways about that one. I don't like must win. There's no such thing as must win. There's so much game left. I mean, you talk about 6 games in the schedule. That is more than enough time for plenty to happen.
But I like it in terms of the sense of desperation.
They can't get blown out. It's a must not get blown out, essentially. You're right. And they have the reason to push to the final minute if they're down 15 and they can't spare the loss by double digits or whatever. They think they just might feel they need every extra possible point, and Texas A&M might let off a little bit. I don't know what that leads to. Maybe that makes them a better live bet candidate, honestly. If it goes awry and they're down 17 with 12 minutes left, yeah, I probably like it on principle. But for the very basic level, the half-court offense looks pretty good for Georgia. I'm not super upset about what they've been able to develop. They are definitely not shooting well in conference, but the defense looks very good. So if the shooting can kind of come home at all, I do think it's a buy spot on Georgia on that precipice and on the overperformance of Texas A&M. This is a very, very nice spot for me. I believe was it a potential
7.5?
It'll be a play. This is a good spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Georgia is starting to see that positive variance, positive regression from deep over the last couple games. So hopefully for us, that continues. If they limit the turnovers, should get some decent looks in the half court. Also, again, the key is going to be in transition. Can they leak out against a pretty poor, below average Division I wise transition defense, because A&M is stout in the half court.